All right, people. Podcast number 2 for Saturday this weekend. As I said in the Lost podcast, we were recorded today because I'm celebrating my dad's birthday tomorrow. So I will not be around. I am joined by other Luke of the Franchise Addicts and Mr. Motion Sweeney, Pat Sweeney, once again in order to cover people. We finally have it. We had Dune Part 2 around this time period 2 years ago, and now we have our first masterpiece of the year. Yes, that's right. I can officially say it. I can get it out of the way. Pretty much everybody who's seen this movie, people were going out of their way to see this movie a week early. That's how good this was. Phil Lord and Chris Miller's Project Hail Mary, the long-awaited adaptation of the Andy Weir novel. Andy Weir, known for writing the novel The Martian, which was adapted by Ridley Scott 11 years ago. This is Phil Lord and Chris Miller's first live-action film that they have done since 22 Jump Street, all the way back in 2014. It stars Ryan Gosling and a really, really adorable-looking rock-like alien as they're journeying through space in order to save both of their respective species. Gentlemen, just what are your thoughts just coming out of this? Because I have a lot of stuff that I want to get into, a lot of stuff that I want to get through. But first, Luke, we're going to start with you. What were your thoughts coming out of Project Hail Mary? Did it live up to the hype?
Yeah, I came out with a beaming smile. This is my jam. This is my type of movie. I love hard sci-fi. I love the single guy in space trying to figure it all out. Huge sucker for The Martian. I love that movie so much. I love Ridley Scott. I love Damon's performance in it. And this just hit every single bit of that movie and a little bit more. It was fantastic. I couldn't have asked for anything more for a March release. Yeah. Just incredible.
Absolutely. Pat, your thoughts coming out of Project Hail Mary. Did it live up to the hype?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. It felt like the crowd was a huge crowd pleaser that for once it didn't really insult the crowd at all either. It wasn't dumbing anything down. It was, I think, I don't know what it was. It was some moment early on and I heard people around just like kind of giggling, and not just giggling in like a funny way, but just like an endearing way that I was just like, yeah, this has everyone in its grip. And I felt like the movie was so in control, just felt like safe. Like, I had no worries that this was going to go down in any, or take like a bad turn or anything. I was just like, we're good. And it's 2 hours to go. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is why I go to the movies.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So I found this, somebody published basically like this very, very long, kind of summarization of all of the kind of, technical aspects of the film. So I'm going to kind of be reading different spiels from this throughout. So I wanted to start with this, which is that this movie, you're watching a $248 million film, and not a single green or blue screen was used. So I just wanted to throw that out there first. The alien is a handmade puppet. The cockpit physically rotates to simulate gravity. This guy looked at the production tech behind this 95% score, and the engineering is wild. So that's kind of where I want to start this off, which is just the fact that in these dark times that we are living through now, how difficult it is to have a feel-good movie that feels genuine and doesn't feel like it's preaching or talking down to the audience or lecturing us or finger-wagging us, and is just able to kind of have the traditionalist hero's journey, having a solo guy going on an expedition into space, teaming up with an alien, and again, it is Lord and Miller, so it's not going to be overtly existential. At least you don't think going in, it's going to be goofy. There's going to be jokes every 5 minutes. Again, these are the guys that have given us the Jump Street movies. They reinvented the wheel of animation with the Lego movie. They were, they've given us two master classes in animation with the Spider-Verse movies, and also produced that Mitchell's vs. the Machines movie, which was like a little underrated gem that went to Netflix during COVID. And it's interesting because the last time that these guys were going to do a live action film was infamously Solo, a Star Wars story, before they were unceremoniously fired by Kathleen Kennedy. We still don't know the reason why, but I think in hindsight, given what that movie ended up becoming, once Ron Howard took over, a lot of people were like, what the fuck, Kennedy? And this movie kind of serves as even more proof. It's like, why did you just let Lord Miller cook? Like, that's, what's it called? So, sorry, I had to collect my thoughts there. So before I got a little overexcited. But so you have that, and then they kind of just dove fully into animation. Sony basically gave them a blank check to produce the Spider-Verse movies. They have had rip-roaring success with that, but they had, obviously, the, Drew Goddard, who wrote The Martian, famously. Ironically, Pat also just, wrote the Lost episode that we just recapped. You had this script floating around, and I remember hearing that they were going to do this movie. I want to say back it was like pre-COVID. Like they had been circling around doing this movie for quite a while. I don't remember exactly how the production schedule matches up. But essentially, Amazon gets the rights to this movie. The Drew, based off of the. Well, actually, no. Who am I kidding? The Andy Weir novel is not published until 2021. So there, I'm gonna get this right because I don't want to screw this up. So MGM acquires the rights to the novel in 2020. Lord and Miller obviously were hired to direct and produce also in 2020, but they were busy doing the Spider-Verse movie. So in between, well, I think it's once they split up the work between Across the Spider-Verse, Beyond the Spider-Verse, that's when they were able to get fully attached. Ryan Gosling gets on board, and we're kind of off and running to the races. And I think immediately for me, the most notable thing coming out of this is the fact that despite the fact that this is a Lord and Miller movie, right? Again, because they're mostly associated with comedy, the fact that they're doing like an outer space, like existential, like, crisis movie, the fact that this movie kind of has more in line visually with something like Interstellar, like something like Ad Astra, than like some of their previous efforts. I think that, like, again, there wasn't really necessarily cause for skepticism, cause for concern going into this because I think they had a pretty proven track record. But I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts just on the Lord and Miller of it in general?
I think they took what has worked really well with those movies that you mentioned. So they kind of take that humor and non-human part of TARS from Interstellar. And Rocky is very much like the TARS character, just fleshed out a lot more and turned into even more of a character as opposed to being a side kind of humor device. And like you said, the visual stylings of Nolan is in when they're taking the big wide shots, the big, the shots of the spaceships in space and stuff like that. Ad Astra, a lot of the interior, a lot of the darkness and stuff that they're using in there, you're seeing a lot of that. And then just going back to The Martian, a single movie star essentially that controls the camera the entire time, and the movie is written and shot just to get the most out of that character and that actor's performance. I think it's taken all the stuff that I really like throughout sci-fi over the last 10 to 15 years and just put it all into one package, and it shows.
Yeah, it's just pretty much echo all that. Like, it takes everything else and just finds the way to fine tune it to all work as like one thing. Even like Ryan Gosling, I know we'll probably get to it, but like the character, he's able to be funny and quirky, but it doesn't diminish the intelligence of the character. Where everything is believable. He's brave because he has no choice and he has to be. But it felt like a more intelligent, less over the top version of his like nice guys character a little bit at
Very
times.
much so.
Just a very subdued, but not. It just, I don't know. They just found a way to wrangle it all. The visuals and that's it, everything just felt like effortless. Like those visuals, like I didn't like feel like all of a sudden we suddenly stepped into like, oh, there's this planet and it's incredibly gorgeous and there's all these, what is it, astro what is it called?
Astrophage.
Astrophage, thank you. Yeah.
Well, so basically,
yeah.
I
mean, just all these things come out. Sorry, all these things come out, and it's just like, this is gorgeous. And there wasn't a second of where it felt out of nowhere. It was just like everything belonged.
Yeah,
everything.
In my conversation with Luke Reviews, he was saying that that based off of what he saw from the movie and based off of in the what he was seeing for the press and what he was hearing about it leading up to it, he read the book. Obviously, he was saying that for the most part they did a really, really, really good job at this adaptation. I did not read the book, unfortunately, but I also have here in my notes that Drew Goddard apparently spent 6 years writing the screenplay. He described the challenge this way: a screenplay gets about 5% of a novel's word count. The lead is alone for most of the runtime. When he finally gets a co-star, the co-star doesn't speak English. He communicates through sound closer to a whale song and has no face. Goddard called it a screenwriter's nightmare, then said the difficulty was the whole point, and that he and Lord and Miller fought studio pushback to keep Weir's original ending intact, which again, it's given the fact that this movie, I think, for its initial cut was like a little over 3 hours. The final cut ended up being 2 hours and 36 minutes. And you feel it too. Again, this is not a short movie. This is a long movie and you feel it, but it is one of those instances where every single minute, every single frame is essential. I also love too how the narrative itself is cutting back and forth between everything set on the ship and everything kind of leading up to him being on the ship on Earth. And so the narrative itself is kind of interestingly split up that way. Very, very similar to Lost, if you will. The fact that the entire movie you're flashing back to, kind of the events leading up to it.
And Dom, you understand this. It's a screenwriting hack.
Yes, it is.
It allows you to tell way more of the story in a more condensed amount of time.
Yeah.
And
it allows for more mystery too throughout the narrative. It's like if you're figuring out, well, it's an narrative device.
I've never read the book. I figured that he was kind of thrown onto ship because
Right.
they had no other way to do it.
Right. It's one of those things where, again, you can pretty easily figure it out, but the way that the narrative tells it, especially given the fact that, for what Luke told me about the way that the novel plays out, they pretty much adapted it beautifully, where the novel itself is written in the exact same way that the movie's presented, where you're cutting back and forth between him on the ship and then him on Earth, leading up to it. And also the fact that because he has amnesia, because as a result of having been in cryosleep for so long, in stasis for so long, he doesn't remember the events that really led to him being on the ship in the first place. So it allows us as the audience to, even though we may be able to figure out what happens going forward as far as what led him to being there, you are kind of placed in the main character's shoes and are kind of going along the journey with them. And so you're realizing it in real time with them, and it gives us an extra relatability to that character. And to go off of what you were saying, Pat, the Gosling of it all, it's really interesting because, yes, this has a lot in common with his Nice Guys character, but the thing that makes Gosling truly, I think, the movie star of our of this generation, really, is the fact that he really is an underrated actor in the sense, an underrated great actor, I would say, in that none of his characters really feel that similar. He had obviously, Mickey Mouse Club growing up, and then he kind of, the first time I feel like a lot of us saw him was Remember the Titans, and then he gets his first Oscar nomination, only 26 years old, at Half Nelson, a remarkably difficult feat, given that the Oscars almost never recognize young male talent for the lead actor category, and even less so for the wins. We obviously saw what happened this past year with Chalamet, but he gets his first Oscar nomination for Half Nelson in 26 years old, at 26 years old, and he spends the rest of the 2000s kind of going against the grain, if you will, by taking like anti-movie star parts, because he follows up Half Nelson with movies like Lars and the Real Girl, with I gotta look it up now because I'm already forgetting.
Well, as you're going through this, he works with really clever, good creators that aren't big yet. Like,
yes,
he is a very good judge of who is a good creative to work with, and he just does that throughout his career.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then 2011, really, that's the breakout year for him, where he has Crazy Stupid Love, Drive, and The Ides of March. Two of those are crucially important characters for him going forward, between Drive in terms of being the very, very quiet, very subdued, but absolutely brutal, merciless action hitman figure, to Crazy Stupid Love, where he just gets to be the ultimate ladies man, who also is like kind of a cool guy in general. He's like one of the rare ladies men that's not like a scumbag. And from there it's off, because you have you have Blue Valentine the year before, and then you have Place Beyond the Pines, working with Derek C. and friends, Gangster Squad, a little bit of a miss, and then he does some weird stuff with Nicholas Winding Refn, Only God Forgives. And then 2015 onward, Big Short, Nice Guys, La La Land, Blade Runner 2049, First Man, takes off 4 years to spend time with his wife Eva Mendes and his kids, then comes back with The Gray Man, little bit of a misstep there.
Not good.
Yeah, then famously for his performance as Ken in the Barbie movie, the Barbenheimer event from 3 years ago, gets his second Oscar nomination for that movie, and the only actor nominated for that movie, which is still an irony that is too good that I have to point out. And then he's in The Fall Guy, which is a movie that I feel like kind of fell by the wayside, just given everything that happened in 2024, still kind of rebounding from the strike. So I guess kind of what I take away from all of that is that his performance as Ryland Grace, I kind of see it's a little bit of an Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems, that it feels like a culmination. It feels like an amalgamation. It feels like he's like reached a certain point in his career. He's been acting for so long. He's been a part of our lives for so long that this really feels like it's incorporating all of those different elements of all of his different characters, where, yeah, he gets to play the goofball, he gets to play the quirky guy, he gets to play the guy that gets knocked on his ass, but there's a sadness to this character of Ryland Grace. The emphasis here as far as why he's the guy for the job is not necessarily because he was a cocky asshole who was like kind of, been reduced to teaching middle school. It's the fact that he is lonely. He is a coward. He is kind of afraid of facing up to and potentially disappointing and the world and not measuring up to his full potential. And it's one of the rare instances where you have an atypical hero, a reluctant hero, if you will, where the rest of the characters in the movie are kind of having to be the ones to push him in and push him along on this journey. And obviously, once you see that he's an action, you see that he is more than capable. He is a genius. You see, once he immediately pops out of stasis, he's already starting to write numbers on the board, figure out equations, figure out where he is. So you show that he was always capable of doing this and pulling off this mission. It really was just himself that was holding it back. And it's a really awesome character dynamic and struggle. It's not one that you would see typical because, again, so many of the characters that you see in these types of movies and these types of stories are always so brooding, so miserable. They've got this massive existential weight, you know. McConaughey in Interstellar, you know, he doesn't want to leave his kids, but he's also like, you know, feeling the weight of like the missed potential of humanity. And Brad Pitt in Ad Astra, he's just like really sad because he misses his dad and he's had that trauma hang over his head for a while. But this time it's just like, you're just have Gosling being like a goof who's literally being like, I put the knot in astronaut. Like that's the type of character that we're dealing with here. It's so refreshing.
I think what's happening here is the guys that you had mentioned, the McConaughey's, the Damon, and they're adults. They are adults in space. Gosling is playing an adult who has been beaten down by the adult world and is therefore still a kid in his own mind. Because he's that, like you said, that cocky 18-year-old that wrote this crazy advanced paper that when he presented it to the adult world, hey, this is my doctorate thesis or whatever it was, he got ridiculed and he never trusted them ever again. And that, without having to explain anything, it makes sense why he's a middle school teacher who just goofs around with kids all day long. And like, that's where he finds his joy, is like explaining science stuff to kids.
Yeah. And
he doesn't like dealing with adults.
Right. And that's what kind of is such the perfect explanation as far as what kicks off this whole movie. Because going into this, I remember being like, why the hell is a middle school, again, having not read the book, being like, why the hell is a middle school science teacher being recruited to go on an expedition into deep space to save humanity? And again, the way that the movie is not only able to kind of explain that, but also make it make sense and also kind of make it like he is kind of the only logical choice for this job, ultimately, you know, given his expertise and given his knowledge and given what he's capable of. But that is a great explanation in terms of, you're right, in terms of, you know, you have, I feel like, people like us who are often, you know, let's face it, it's part of the reason why we're all here. We are all big kids pretending to be adults, ultimately. And the fact that so much of the time, you know, the adult world, if you will, looks down on, craps out people like us, you know, people who go in with, you know, with these big, lofty, idealistic aspirations to change the world and say F you to the man. And then the adult world just kind of, you know, laughs at us, just gives a swift kick in the ass or a demeaning pat on the back, if you will. And you know, we are kind of rejected and relegated to the sidelines ultimately. And this is a character who all of that has happened to. And now when given a chance to finally, you know, make up for that, he's like, no, I don't know if I necessarily want it, despite being faced with, you know, a conflict that is literally, again, an interstellar level conflict of where if you don't solve this problem, if you don't figure this out, the world is literally going to end ultimately. Pat, what's your take on all that?
Yeah, no, the joy and sound of optimism that the character has for being a teacher and working with kids, and the patience that takes, that leads so much into being able to bounce off of Rocky, which, by the way, the puppet doesn't work unless we believe it. And the only way you can really believe it is through, you know, it's like the Luke Skywalker Yoda thing.
Yep.
Like people don't give Mark Hamill like a lot of credit. You know, he's not the best actor, but they don't give him a lot of credit for how that's what makes that work.
Yep.
And that character, just all that optimism and that sort of childlike quality just allows Rocky to be alive. Like it's not a puppet. It's an actual, you know, it's Rocky. That's it.
Exactly.
That's all. And there's also like the moment early on in the movie, he has a funeral that he has to give to like two people early on in the movie. That was like the moment for me that I was just like full locked in, because I was just like, and he kind of locks in too a little bit in his own lonely and just like kind of like subtle way that Gosling's so good at just being. Yeah. Which is why his always has like that sly sort of smirk that he seems to always be finding some amusement in, like even like stuff like La La Land and everything like that. Like the character is always like 3 seconds away from like making a snide remark, and he's like that almost all the time, maybe exception of like Blade Runner and I guess, you know, Drive and Only God Forgives and all that stuff. But that's the quality that he brings, and I think I don't know who else could have done this. I could have gotten this out of it. So yeah.
I always see him as like basically somebody who right before anything he does on camera, he just winks at you and goes like, watch this.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, you did it again.
Yeah. I would trust him in something like The Fall Guy to just make it better, to make it less, you know, less ridiculous, or just to I don't know, just to ground it somehow, just because of how he is, and that's what he has to do here. Except it's a much larger task in a movie that's much more,
Well, it's the
emotional
same
and
thing,
serious.
and
Yeah.
it's interesting because of the Mickey Mouse Club connection. But it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Timberlake on SNL, and it's why Gosling's so good on SNL too. Is
Yeah.
they just have that bravado, that swag to just base, and then the like acting kid genes to just be like,
Right.
you want to go see the greatest performance you're about to see, because I'm going to do it.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah, and it's one of those reasons why Gosling has truly become one of those actors where every time I see him in something, I'm like, I don't care what it's going to be about, unless it's Terrence Malick movie, which again, we all know my thoughts on Terrence Malick.
Yeah, that was I like Terrence Malick, man. That wasn't good. The
I'm
one he
never
was
gonna
in was
not
not
take a
good.
chance to
but
shit on
yeah.
Terrence Malick 2010s movies if I get a chance. But it's one of those instances where every time I see Ryan Gosling in something, I'm like, I'm in. I don't care what it's even going to be about. I'm in. Now there's Rockies. I want to talk about him for a second. This is the next spiel of this thing that I found on Twitter. He's the alien co-lead, and he's not CGI. Neil Scanlon, the creature designer who built the Porgs for Star Wars, spent a full year on this character, over 300 designs before they landed on the final look. Rocky's a thin, hollow shell, 3D printed from a digital sculpture, then hand-painted in see-through layers so light passes through him like skin. His arms pop off and swap out depending on the scene. One set has a closed fist for walking, another has tiny motorized fingers strong enough to pick up objects. 5 puppeteers, nicknamed the Rocky Tears, operated him in every scene. James Ortiz, an award-winning puppet designer from the New York Theater, voiced him and controlled him on set. When Scanlon met him, he told Ortiz, "You're Frank Oz, and I'm making Yoda for you." Every reaction Gosling gives to the alien is something physically in front of him. And that, I think, is really what is the reason why not only do we love Rocky as a character, but why we love the relationship between Grace and Rocky, is the fact that in a way that I feel like is even more tangible than obviously, Mando and Grogu, which ironically, let's face it, it's going to be a much lesser movie that we're getting later this year, is the relationship between these two ultimately is what makes for the rest of the movie, because you have the first 30 to 45 minutes, which is again Gosling on Earth, showing obviously him working with with the science team on Earth in order to figure out the origin of the astrophages and everything. But once he's on the ship, again, as much as we love Gosling, there's only so much I feel like that we can enjoy about him going solo throughout space. And then you introduce Rocky, and you have a very, very funny sequence where the ship first shows up, and they're like doing the bit where he's like trying to escape, but then the ship is following it, and it's like mimicking his moves.
No sound made it so
and
much
then it
better.
launches the message. It's so great. Like, once again, just showing that like Lord and Miller have not lost and not missed a beat in terms of their great sense of humor. And then you first see Rocky, and immediately you're kind of thrown off by like the design. And I basically described it as like a realistic looking version of Geodude, the Pokemon, but without the face. It was like an extra set of legs that like crawls around spider like, and it is so indelible. Like seeing Grace react off of him, seeing the relationship that is formed between them, seeing how they truly are like able to like find this common cause with each other, how they're able to relate to each other. It's like a throwback to, I feel like, the great 80s movies. Like every time you would have like a human character interacting with a non-human figure, like I'm reminded a lot of like the Johnny Five robot from that one movie. Or it's also it's Anakin, and it's 3PO and R2 from Star Wars. That's ultimately what this dynamic is. We've seen this dynamic so many different times throughout movies, but it is done so well here. And ultimately, it's the fact that not only are they working towards a common goal, but they find it's a great relationship. They find in each other what is missing from each other. Grace finds a companionship in a way that he has really not had on Earth, as well as finding an equal. And Rocky, who, despite having a massive crew when he left his planet in order to go on the same mission that Grace did, unfortunately, all of his crew have died. And, Grace knows things that he doesn't know. Rocky obviously knows a lot of things that he doesn't know, given that he is able to, come up with either the first thing that Grace remarks upon when he first meets Rocky is that, he's been able to come up with a solid form of xenon, which is a gas here on Earth. So just already that is setting us up for one of the best dynamics, really the dynamic that carries us through the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and he is basically the answer to his paper that gets rejected. You need water to sustain life, and he literally meets a rock guy who is alive. And this reminded me, and this is going to be a weird comparison, but I think it makes a little bit of sense, is the movie Up with the talking dog.
Yeah.
Where you have an intelligence that you need to give to something that doesn't have a face and can only speak in broken language. And somehow this movie is able to convince you that Rocky, even though he's like kind of acts like a dog, a talking dog and all that sort of stuff, has this incredible intelligence and is actually helping Gosling's character out the entire time. And the way that they do that and get you to buy in, like over, and they slow roll it too. Cause like the first time I saw the character design, I'm like, this isn't going to work. This is, I don't like that. And they just slowly ease you into it and ease you into it and ease you into it. And it pays off by the end.
And it really makes a difference as well, because given the plot mechanics of this movie, I mean, obviously, again, so just to break down a plot, the plot essentially as far as what is the cause of this. So obviously it starts off, Ryland Grace, he's a middle school teacher. He's approached by Sandra Hüller's character. Her character's name is, let me get this right.
Eva something.
Yeah, it's
Eva.
by Eva Spratt.
Spratt.
Yeah, who is a part of the secret Hail Mary project. She approaches him in order to come in and study these recovered potential alien organisms, which are revealed to be these things called astrophages, which are these little outer space particles that have been discovered as part of this thing called the nebulous line, which is a line that is going from the sun to Venus, in which they discovered that these little alien things are basically consuming the sun's energy and causing it to slowly decrease in a move that will unfortunately, reduce the sun's energy and basically kill all life on Earth. So they are basically able to take the astrophages, they're able to manipulate it into a spacecraft, in which basically the Hail Mary project has discovered that a series of stars that have all been dealing with these astrophages are all risking the same problem. They're all risking dying, except for this one system that they discovered that, for whatever reason, despite possessing a nebulous line, is not seeing any reduction in the sun's energy. So they come up with the spacecraft. They're going to launch a crew into space. It's a one-way trip. It's two, because despite the fact that they're only able to produce enough astrophages to where the crew can only get there and then send their findings back. And then again, it's a one-way trip. They're going to die in space, essentially. There's an accident on Earth. Several of the crew members die. Gosling is basically forced to go along with it. He goes into space. He meets up with Rocky. They manage to make their way to the system, and they discover that the astrophages, the reason why this one system, as they discover, the reason why the astrophages are not causing the sun to reduce it is because they discovered that this one planet, which they then lovingly name Adrian, and obviously in homage to obviously the Rocky franchise, there's a natural predator that exists on that planet that is allowing basically the comings and goings of the astrophages to become maintained. So you have all the science trappings, and again, the story is quite interesting, but it's one of those things where the story and the science of it all is not the focus. The focus is the relationship between Grace and Rocky, and ultimately how, kind of all of Grace's trappings result in him basically finding in space the thing that he was missing on Earth. And that, I think, ultimately is what gives this one a little bit of an extra edge and makes this one a little bit extra special. The fact that as much science is going on, it is all in service of kind of the character work and the story and the character dynamics. And that, I think, is really kind of why this movie is really working on a different level than even something that I think surpasses elements of my beloved Interstellar.
One of the things with this movie that's just interesting about why it just does work is that there's a karaoke scene in this movie that
amazing.
Has not that it doesn't have any business or anything like that, but it's just, if you heard about she sings Harry Styles was a Sign of the Times or whatever, and it's like, okay,
right,
it's a scene where she starts just absolutely nailing this, by the way, and then everyone, you could tell, it's like everyone feels alive. They remember, like, for a moment, like, we're alive, and it's incredible. And I don't care about where it has, as far as it's in the flashback. It doesn't really have, I don't know where, not even sure where its place is in, like, the story, even still, but it takes place in the idea of, this movie making you feel alive through this, like, kindness and this hope.
Exactly.
And that's why this works. I do have some nitpicks if anybody wants to get into
it. It works in conjunction with the story, because even a scene like that where you're right, you're looking at this, you're like, what does this necessarily have to do with the story? But even a scene like that is important in terms of continuing to instill that, like, this movie, I feel like, is an active combatant with cynicism. Ultimately, this movie is actively waging war with cynicism, where every single chance throughout this movie, they're constantly being like, why are we doing this? What is the point? Is humanity worth saving? I mean, this movie really doesn't even concern itself. This doesn't even really ask that question of, it's like, this is just the thing that we have to do, because this is kind of what our job is as people who are capable, as we are the only people capable of combating this. And the reason why we are doing this is because of moments like this, because moments like this, small as they are ultimately the things that make life worth living, if you will. And I think that's kind of part of the reason why people are gravitating towards this and really, really taking a lot away from this, even more so than it just being a really, really exceptionally well-made movie. Is this movie is the first movie in a long, long time, and especially given everything that is happening in the world as we're speaking, that really feels like it instills hope and gives us something to actually like root for in humanity, which for the most part, the last couple of years, is just feels like it's been batting us over the head with humanity is just not worth saving at all. And so,
well, I just wanted to point out that the Grace character is such a good representation of humanity in this one way, in that he is reluctant.
yes,
He throws a fit every time something happens to him that basically stops his plan to move forward. He throws a fit for like 3 days and doesn't know what to do. Like he drinks all the vodka to start and is just basically bummed out. But then as he sits there and wallows in his misery and his plot and where he's stuck now, and then he just starts working, and he just keeps working and figures it out. And it goes back to like him as a child. Like, you know, sometimes you got to drag a kid to do something that you know that they should be doing. And by the time they start then getting into that thing or whatever it is, they're enjoying themselves and they complete it and they feel good when they finish it up. And that's just what he does the entire time. And a lot of the solutions that he comes up with would not have been come up with by like an adult. Like he's the first person to like be like, okay, well, we'll make a box out of stuff I can buy from Home Depot and just see if this works.
Right, Home Depot. By the way, him hanging out with Carl, played by Lionel Voice.
Marcus.
Yeah, it was great.
There,
Yeah.
That was awesome. I love that.
But that's another sign of a good movie is
Yeah.
all these bit parts. You just put people that we like seeing, and we like seeing Marcus from The Bear and stuff. So just put him in.
It dovetails as well with something that Vince Gilligan was saying before the release of Pluribus, where he accepted an award at some writers' event in either 24 or 25. And he was basically saying how after a decade of, you know, rooting for anti-heroes, rooting for the bad guys, the Tony Sopranos, the Walter Whites, the Kendall Roys, all of the above. It's like he was basically saying how, and that was kind of part of his goal with Pluribus, even though the Carol character from that show is posed as being very unlikable. The fact that she is posed as being the only person that's like trying to fight back against the groupthink of the hive mind in that show. He's basically, his thesis statement is that it's like we need to start like creating character like good guys that we can root for again. And I feel like this movie is a really, really good example of that in terms of the Ryland Grace character. Despite kind of all the, adults in the room that are with him and all of the cynicism that he is constantly being dealt with, he ultimately is a notable character that you could root for. He is reluctant, but he is ultimately a good guy. He is trying to do the right thing. He's smart, but he's not trying to use it. He's not necessarily ambitious per se, because the ambition was thrown back in his face. And so he really ultimately is the perfect character to root for, because when he's showing, and also why his dynamics with Rocky is so great, because Rocky is an alien, naturally, has that natural naivete based on not knowing about Earth and about the cynicism that comes with it. He only knows he only knows obviously about his own alien species, the Eridites, I think is what they're called, the Iridians. But it creates this like kind of mutual sharing where in Grace showing Rocky everything that there is about Earth, it like kind of reminds us about like all of the, great joyful moments. We can take solace in something as simple as like, walking along the beach or watching fireworks or, just watching a really good movie that we love. It's like all those moments that we kind of like now take for granted in our adult lives. It kind of reminds us what the joy of that. And it's really, really, really tough to pull off already in any movie in general. And the fact that this movie pulls it off in a movie that's supposed to, be in outer space and have all of these crazy insane visuals, it's exceptional. I want to bring up the technicals for a second as well. So this movie is shot by Greig Fraser, who in the last couple of years has been killing it, to say the least. Dune, Batman, Linus Sandgren obviously replaced him for the upcoming Dune Part 3. His upcoming film, I believe he has, obviously Rogue One, Lion, Foxcatcher, Zero Dark 30, Killing Them Softly. The creator last year, he was also shooting the upcoming Beatles 4-part cinematic.
4 Beatles movies. Yeah.
I still don't know how they're going to pull that off. Like I will believe. I'm like, are they all going to be released in the same weekend? Or are they going to be released like once a week?
No,
I have no idea how they're going to pull that off.
Once a week or once every 2 weeks is the plan.
Something
like April of 2027.
It's like throughout the year.
We still got a while to go. We still got a full 2 years before we get that. But so he shoots this movie, and that's notably one of the first things that I see when I see this movie. Is I'm like, oh, this is shot by Lord Miller, but this does not at all resemble like 22 Jump Street or like this looks even in comparison to other outer space movies. I'm like, this has such a distinct visual look. Like the sequences on Adrian when when they switch on the cameras and they're collecting the bits, and when they're, you know, with the cloud, with the colors and the green and the red mix, I'm like, I'm awestruck. It's amazing, especially in conjunction with the Daniel Pemberton score. But so Greg Fraser won the Oscar for shooting Dune and filmed the space scenes in this movie in the larger IMAX format. So obviously the taller images make for a better viewing in IMAX theaters versus the Earth flashbacks he shot in regular widescreen. Then the team does something quite unusual. They take the digital footage and they print it onto real film strips twice using 2 different types of film stock. Then they scan those strips back into digital, which, while sounding redundant, adds a texture and warmth that you could only get from physical film. It's the same technique that he used on Dune and the Batman. And I think there's a reason why I think that when it comes to notable cinematographers, he is the guy to look out for. I think kind of more than, you know, some of the masters like Roger Deakins and Bob Richardson, who are famously known for shooting, you know, Spielberg and Scorsese and Tarantino's films. The kind of distinct visual language that this movie is continuing, that again was started by those movies like Dune, like Batman, and even like The Creator and such, combining that, you know, that wide epic scope with those very, very intimate, very human moments. It's something that I think all 3 of those movies do super, super well. And I think kind of that's part of why I think modern day viewers are gravitating towards these movies, besides the fact that, again, just visually, they are just some of the best looking stuff out there. And it's funny too, obviously, you know, as we have a new generation that is obviously much more so in tune with the digital language and, you know, the behind the scenes, the making of these films, especially given just how much more accessible it is, you know, than was before previously. It's obviously the part of the continued discussion about film post-COVID has been about kind of the preservation of film and cinema and what makes it notable. And it's conversations like these that are kind of important. You know, the filmmaking process and how that contributes to the overall quality of the film is just as important part of the discussion now as is, you know, the subject matter of the film itself. So just the technicals and just what are your guys' thoughts on it?
Greg Fraser, like you said, is fantastic. I lamented his loss on Dune and Batman. I'm less worried about it now after the Dune trailer and the cinematographer and the Batman taking those shots of whatever city he's taking pictures of, and I'm like, okay, never mind, we're fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does something in like even the Earth sequences. There's something with like the focus that he has where there's like a little bit of like blur to around like a character, and there's just I don't know what I couldn't figure it out. He did it in The Creator too.
Yes.
A lot of the Unearthed stuff reminds me of the look of The Creator.
Yes. In
this, where I almost feel like it's more Fraser than the actual director's visuals. And it was a great choice. I think I don't. It's hard to like put into words, man. He's one of the best we have, and like every single thing he does from now on is just. Is something I look forward to. I will say something I didn't like. There's a choice of like a red strobe light in this movie. Late.
Yeah.
That didn't work for me.
Okay.
It was at the end of a great sequence that I love. That red strobe light.
Doing a spacewalk and it kind of floods over him.
No, it was when Rocky has to get out of his little like shell.
Oh yes. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't like it. Took me out of the it's supposed to be this big emotional thing, and I'm just getting nailed with like this red strobe light because they're trying to cover up for I guess the now CGI, and I was like, that was like the one negative choice. I can't even say that was Fraser. It was more just just had to figure out a way to do this. But other than that, he's one of the best we have. I don't know. I don't have really notes for Fraser. I don't know.
What was notable about the way that he shot the Earth sequences versus the IMAX sequences, that in the IMAX sequences, the space sequences, inside the shuttle, Gosling feels like it's always very concentrated on him, and despite obviously the massive empty feeling of inside the ship, Gosling feels like pretty big, and there's a lot of close-ups to him, versus on Earth, the way that it's shot is that he always feels small. Like the characters, and in terms of the comparisons to The Creator, is that the characters themselves always feel like these ants compared to like the giant wide vistas, when they're on the ocean. It's an interesting little trick, and it adds a little bit of contrast to the space sequences versus the Earth sequences, how the characters feel even larger in space versus on Earth. But that was something that I noticed.
I love that you pointed out that this is rendered back onto physical film and then brought back to digital, because there is something, if you watch enough movies, you will notice the difference between an all digital movie and an all film movie. Humans love physical media. Like we love things that are on physical things that are then projected to us. We're not digital people. So when you have that kind of texture that you can't really explain when you're looking at it, why it feels like it's on film as opposed to not on film, but it's there and it's real and it works. And it takes, like, it's so important for space movies to feel like they're on Earth, because guess what? None of us get to go to space. So we have to imagine it. So the only way that we can imagine it is you take elements from Earth and you put it into space. And then we go, oh yeah, I get that. That makes a bunch of sense. And so like you feel as the character when they're in zero gravity and he turns the centrifuge on and then that gravity hits, and the moment his feet land, you're like, you land too with him and you're like, yes, okay, I get it. We're centered now and we're good to go. And I can figure this out, what he's going through.
Yeah.
It's like that imperfect scratch of a record on music that just, the film grain. It's like when you get Blu-rays, like physical media, where they try to like preserve the film look of something.
Yes.
It's just, it has that like sense of like you're watching a movie, and that's okay. It's fine to admit that.
Exactly. So. But real quick, in order to touch on more of the technicals, because you pointed out again the tangibility of it. Like I said, we talked about Rocky, but I want to talk about the production design as well, because the entire interior of the cockpit, it's all practical. So it's obviously built as a real set at Shepperton Studios in England, not a miniature, not a digital model. So they have a full-size ship interior that you could walk through. The production designer, Charlie Wood, he studied the International Space Station, Russia's Mir Station, and the Boeing 747 cockpit to get the look right, deliberately made the panels mismatch because real spacecraft are assembled from parts made by different companies. So nothing that's kind of add to like the imperfections and why it feels even more real. Nothing matches perfectly. The cockpit is only about 8 feet wide. It sits on a mechanical platform that can tilt, spin, shake. So that's why when the ship is changing directions or entering different gravity conditions, the whole set moves. So like when you feel like you're moving with the character, that's because the characters are literally moving with the set as it is moving. Chairs end up on walls, ladders flip direction. Gosling is suspended inside a spinning rig so he can float and move through the ship for real, reacting to actual hardware around him. No guessing where the wall might be later on. So again, that's part of the reason why you really feel like you're in there in the cockpit with it, because he is literally moving with the moving and shifting cockpit.
And the same thing goes for Rocky being a physical puppet that Gosling can interact with and is actually playing off of. If it's just him looking at like, a blue little circle thing that they're then projecting the CGI over the top of, I don't know if it works as well.
It definitely doesn't.
Literally the scene where Gosling's trying to teach himself how to drive the ship and Rocky's just in the back co-piloting going like, bad, real bad. Horrible. What are you doing?
Yep. And it helps too that it's like probably like an actual person, like just offset, like actually talking with him. So not
so God, like looking over his shoulder, like he's driving, like, what do you want me to do here?
He's literally actually driving. It's great. And also I love too that, like, because again, you could so easily get like a big name actor to voice Rocky, but the fact that they don't, and they pull kind of, again, if that this movie is very, very, the Grace Rocky relationship is very, very TARS from Interstellar coded, because again, in the same way that
they get to do the joke too, where he's going through the different famous voices.
Yes. But yeah, that was even great. And then they even had the little Meryl Streep bit where it's
she can do anything.
That was great. And then the first voice that they have is the Frank Welker doing the Megatron voice from Transformers. I thought that was great. Again, just this movie sense of humor. Again, Lord Miller,
kid humor,
still the best.
There was also they did the Close Encounters theme.
Yes,
and they tapped on the
very much,
which is great.
Bit where he goes outside for the first time, he pokes his head out and sees the void of space, and he's like, nope, and immediately goes back in. And they basically get shot out into space, like this. Like some really just great sense of, again, this movie has an incredible sense of humor right there. But again, it's a fact that similar to how Bill Irwin, who while also being a great character actor, is also like I believe a real puppeteer as well, and he was actually doing the motion capture for TARS, not just the voice. In the same way, the guy who is doing the puppets for Rocky is also doing the voice as well, the guy James Ortiz. So it helps that you don't have like a big name actor who's just voicing it from some sound booth somewhere, just kind of sounding lazy. So it's like a real person on set that Gosling is interacting with to help make the tangibility, make the relationship that much more real. Only other thing really that I have left to say as far as this movie in terms of kind of wrapping it up before we get into the Immortal Man is just, so this movie has 95% from 212 critics, 98% from over 2,500 audience ratings. The lead isn't a superhero, a cop, or a soldier. He's just an ordinary middle school science teacher. So in order to kind of sum up why it feels like so many people are related to this, so many people are loving it, why this movie feels like it has universal acclaim is it's doing what it is that I feel like the great movies do. This character is not like kind of, for lack of a better word, a Nepo baby. He's not somebody who was like Dane. He was not somebody who has this like great prophecy put onto him. He's just an ordinary guy that everybody can relate to, going through this great existential crisis for the betterment of his species, at forming this loving relationship with this creature that, while not human, has certain qualities that are better than most humans. And going back to the original point of him, being an overgrown kid who truly finds his way in the classroom, and unfortunately it sucks that he had to be, tricked and drugged into going onto the ship. But the fact that he not only gets this loving relationship where first, not only does he get a chance to live and not, go on this one-way journey in which he dies when Rocky gives him half of his own astrophages so that he can get back home. But then upon discovering that the astrophages almost escape because because there's a leak in the crate, Grace chooses to forego going back to Earth, goes back, saves Rocky, ends up giving him, allowing for him to get the astrophages back to his own world. And, before sending the probes back to Earth, and ends up living on Rocky's home world. And ends up basically teaching all of those astrophages, and it creates for one of the most just like heartwarming and like just good feeling endings. Again, real big shout out to the Daniel Pemberton score. Like, again, just truly, I think the feel good movie of the decade so far.
Pat, I want to hear do you have any other nitpicks? Because you had said earlier that.
Oh no, it was really
just the strobe light.
It was that I did think that the last last half hour, I feel like they moved fast, a little bit faster than the rest of the movie. And I do kind of get it, because after that big, climactic scene, right, the rest of it really isn't, in like movie terms, climactic. It's really just, if you do if you do the idiotic thing that some reviewers they just tell you what happens and they pretend that's a negative, because they just say, all that happens is they separate and then he goes back and that's it and whatever. But I think they just worked with what they could. I do think it wrapped up a little bit like too fast, but other than that, man, it's the more I leave the movie, the more I really don't like it. It is a nitpick. It's something I think to say because it is the end of the movie, but I don't. This is like for me, it's not an A+. It's like an A.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. I think it doesn't have an ending problem in that I don't like the ending. I think the ending lands exactly where it should. Yeah. I think it just, the pacing of that last kind of 20 minutes, it does the thing that a lot of movies do, which you think it's going to end. Oh, but there's 5 more minutes. Yeah.
And
there's 5 more minutes.
It very much is like a Return of the King.
But it's such a good movie that you're like, I'll watch 5 more minutes.
Yeah. I remember sitting there. Go ahead. Yeah. No, I remember sitting there thinking like, I thought it was like wrapping up, and I'm like, this has been 2.5 hours. Like I knew like it was well paced. I was like, this is like flew by, and it had like 25 minutes to go. Right. And I was like, oh, all right. So again, that's on a first watch. When you watch something again and you have the whole scope of where you're at, it's a totally different thing. Yeah, and exactly. I expect that that nitpick, which it is what it is. I expect that to subside. And this is my favorite of the year so far. I'm so pumped that it could end up like number 10 by the end of the year.
Same.
That's how this year looks, which is insane, but it's realistic.
Yeah, again,
we have this is plethora of riches coming.
It's insane this year.
My favorite of the year so far. The fact that this is already a guaranteed lock for my top 10. The fact that, like you said, Pat, once you get the ending within the scope of the ending last hour, knowing where it's going and knowing where it's going to end ends up becoming like my favorite, because just the way that it ends, the way the interlacing with the soundtrack and the Daniel Pemberton score, him ending on Rocky's planet and getting to see,
which is way better than Rocky going back to Earth, where we would just dissect him. So
exactly,
thank God, absolutely.
Way better, and to end it with him back in the classroom to like screaming kids that are just so.
And he could always go home whenever he wants to go home. He'll be able to. So it's not even So it's he could wait for Earth to warm up again and then go back home.
Yep,
if he wants.
Project Hail Mary 2. Grace returns home.
It's like, but honestly, but here's the thing: I wouldn't even want a sequel, because knowing that he would basically get to spend the rest of his life on Rocky's planet, like just teaching him, like, no, just end it there. Like, I want like that version in my head. Ultimately.
I only selfishly want it so we can cover it on Franchise Addict.
That's fair.
I do see the Variety said that it's going to make about $77 million this weekend, which is Amazon's biggest Amazon's record,
and
which is
again,
good.
kudos to Amazon, the fact that they were
Yeah.
still able to
Yeah.
get some good things out of everything that they have done.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And
Also, fuck Amazon.
Yeah, fuck Amazon. But again, dude, you have no idea how depressed I was seeing like the Amazon fucking logo pop up or the
it's like the
I was like,
Apple
God
and
damn
Netflix.
it! Like,
It's like I can't escape.
If I had one nitpick with this movie, it would be that one. But other than that,
yeah, I'll say it again in Rocky E's fuck Amazon statement.
Yeah.
They couldn't even like do like a special Amazon logo.
Yeah,
just
it's
the
like,
normal
come
fucking
on, guys, what are we
clean
doing?
bullshit.
Yeah,
that I now sit in my Sony-owned Alamo Draft House.
But yeah, this is without a doubt my favorite movie of the year so far. This is the easiest 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 that I've given so far to a movie. Again, just a movie that felt good. I've seen it twice so far. I saw it early last week, and then I saw it again on Thursday night. Pat, it's funny. I saw it with Mike, and once we were done watching it, he looked back at me and he was just shaking his head because I kept telling him, like, it's the feel good movie of the year, and you knew that he didn't want to believe it. So, but then he looked back. He's like, God damn it. He's like, you were right again. I'm like, I never disappoint when it comes to that. Let's go. So your guys' final thoughts and star ratings for Project Hail Mary.
I'm going to give it to you in Rocky. Amaze. This movie was so much fun, and I had high expectations. I do want to say one thing, movie reviewers and people of the movie sphere and world. Let's just back off on calling something the greatest movie of all time before everybody. Stop with the letterbox.
Or the scariest of all time.
Put this into the top 100 movies of all time. Letterbox is already
calm down.
like.
Wait, Luke, you mean movie reviewers online tend to hyperbolize things and put things
it's
only
crazy.
In the best? I was say it ain't so. That's never happened before with any movie ever, especially not in the last decade.
We do that question?
Really?
Yeah, baseball season started up. I'm a big baseball fan. It's 162 games. People will react to one, like no one calms down. No one can calm down anywhere. And movie reviewers, man.
And yet,
I really enjoyed Undertone.
Now, so.
I really enjoyed Undertone. I thought it was really good, especially the last like 20 minutes of that movie. But like scariest movie ever, like you guys got to stop.
Yeah,
but yet with all of that, with all of this going into it, with all the hype, it absolutely lives up to the hype. And I couldn't be happier with a follow-up from Andy Weir for The Martian, a movie that I hold very near and dear to my heart, just because it's so much fun. And what it does is it takes somebody that seems so normal and puts them in an extraordinary place. And that's what movies are for, man.
Yes.
I am never going to get to go to space in my entire life, more than likely. But I get to go over and over again through movies, and that's incredible.
Yes, and this movie, I would say, like, again, this is the first time really I would say since Interstellar and Ad Astra. There's a reason why I bring those up. Where it's like I really feel
Dom,
yes,
for us a little bit, For All Mankind,
absolutely,
the engine that keeps giving.
Season 5 next week, finally.
Yes,
only 3 years, but we're finally back. I'm catching up on season 4, and I'm very excited.
My brother just watched season 4 in preparation for it, and he's like, "This show went off the rails." I'm like, "Yeah, it did, but it's fun."
But it's fun. It's so much fun. Pat, your final thoughts and star ratings on Project Hail Mary.
It's my favorite of the year so far. I guess I'll look at my letterbox. I gave it 4.5 thumbs down out of 5. I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, again, it's like thumbs down. Yeah, it's great. That's gonna.
I freaked out people with that. People that like read the book too. I've been like, 2 thumbs down. They're like, oh no. I was like, you said you read the book. I was just like.
That's a really, really fun way that we can mess with people. All right, so before we get out of here, real quick, Luke, have you seen Immortal Man yet or not yet?
No, I have not.
Okay, so
but I will be, and I don't want it spoiled. So.
Okay, we will not spoil it. So real quick, Pat, you and me. So we both saw Immortal Man, which is the kind of the movie that is kind of basically the feature film continuation / wrap up of Peaky Blinders, which was a British show that kind of really, I would say, helped even more so than Oppenheimer launch Cillian Murphy to like mainstream stardom. Like I feel like in a way we don't get Oppenheimer, we don't get that massive major Oscar win moment in 2023 without Peaky Blinders. So real quick, like when did you come to Peaky Blinders? When did you start watching it?
I think I got into it during COVID. I caught up with it during COVID. Sorry, my computer's going weird for a second. I caught up with it during COVID. I think season 5 was just coming out during COVID.
Yep.
So I caught up with then, and then obviously there was a long wait, like with all these, fucking British shows that watched season 6. The show, and I'll say the same thing. I'm obviously no spoiler, but the movie, like there are outside forces with the show and with this movie that like kind of hurts
Yeah.
the show. I mean, look, you've seen the
Yeah,
last
I've
season.
seen.
Of the show,
Yeah, if
right?
you've seen it, you know that there's a certain.
Oh
people
yeah,
that
I've seen.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Helen McCroy's like
Helen McCrory's untimely
fucked that season
Yeah.
so badly.
Yeah.
You know, and
Still great. I am a humongous apologist for that show. I think that Tommy
Yeah.
Shelby is Cillian Murphy's best character. I think it's the best Tom Hardy with the Alfie Solomon's character. But the show loses people and it gets not as great.
Yes.
I really love this. I think Adrian Brody is awful, but he's great at the same time.
Awesome.
It's a horrendous act. It is an outrageous.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because he's so good.
It's like Brad Pitt, Buongiorno, like bad.
Kind of a little bit, yeah.
But I didn't care. I preferred that season still to like 5. They got really stylistic in the last 2 seasons, and this movie follows. I think the director did 3 episodes of the last 2 seasons.
This director.
I don't know what episodes he did, but he did something in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, it's Owen Harris, I believe. No, sorry, it's Tom Harper, who he mostly did stuff on the last couple seasons, I want to say.
I really enjoyed the show. I gave this movie like 4 to 5 on Letterboxd, which is what I would kind of give the show.
Yeah.
The show had its moments. It had its. I wasn't like the biggest fan of it.
The show certainly
I could tell you like great moments. I probably wouldn't even tell you great episodes. I would say great moments. Yeah. And I can come up with like 10 of them.
Once this show loses Annabelle Wallace, then the show definitely
goes down to hell. It definitely goes down to hell.
Yeah, the
losing Sam Neill, the losing Annabelle Wallace, and what I'll say is the show certainly.
I'm okay with losing Sam Neill. I
love Sam Neill.
By the time he was out, I was done with his shtick.
It's kind of funny because the show obviously had a lot of big peaks and valleys, but the thing that I noticed notably about it is I'm like, plot-wise, I'm like, this show is almost like to a T does exactly what Boardwalk Empire does. Like to a fucking T. Like if you match both those shows next to each other, you're like, almost to like
I would put that
the ending of season 5 of Peaky Blinders and the ending of season 4 of Boardwalk Empire are almost exactly the same. Like literally,
I prefer Peaky Blinders. I prefer Peaky Blinders and Boardwalk Empire. You're right. I think Boardwalk Empire was so much longer. It was 5 seasons, and it was like a lot of those. Early on, it's like 10 episodes where there's it was 10 episodes, and there's like 18 characters at one point, and they're all just getting their own little 5 minutes, and it's just like, dude, enough. Like, so you got it's a crime show, kill some people.
But every season basically falls like Tommy gets into a bunch of deep shit. How is he ever going to figure his way out? It seems like he's never going to do it. And then by the end of the season, he has come up with some genius way to subvert everything throughout the entire season.
Plot armor, to say the least. But
there were missteps with this movie. But
what I'll say about The Immortal Man, as far as kind of how it worked for me, because it did work for me a lot more than I thought it was going to. First off, the acquisition of Barry, the acquisition of the new characters. You got Barry Keoghan, you got Rebecca Ferguson, and you got Tim Roth in this movie. What's called
all really good.
Yeah, all really, really good in this. And secondly is the fact that this movie basically does what a lot of TV movies that were like kind of the continuations of shows that didn't necessarily get to wrap up the way that they wanted to. I saw this case, the 2 biggest examples that come to my mind are the Entourage movie and the Deadwood movie. In terms of shows that were kind of
there you go.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic because it's kind of ironic because given the fact that Entourage had 8 seasons, the fact that last season felt so rushed and felt like it didn't really get to wrap things up the way that they wanted to, but then the movie comes out a couple years later. After Medellin, it's just slowed down. I did like season 5 though. Season 5 was a good season, but after Medellin,
I did like the ending with him getting the Scorsese role.
That was good.
That show.
I was wrong. But what's it called? But Entourage kind of gets a wrap up. Deadwood unjustly canceled after only 3 seasons, and then they get a movie about a decade and a half later in order to be able to wrap.
I preferred this movie to the Deadwood movie.
I agree.
Movie is not very good.
Yeah.
Well, good. Yeah.
In terms of this movie kind of wrapping up any of the loose overhanging threads, because for anybody who watched the whole show and saw the way that the show ended, it lands on a little bit of a cliffhanger. There's a little bit to be desired, obviously there's still a couple of loose overhanging threads. And while I don't necessarily know if this movie, The Immortal Man, wrapped up everything from the show that in a way that I would have seen fit, the fact that they kind of did continue the themes of the show and wrap things up, I think in the best way, in the way that it should have been wrapped up, I think really kind of helped set this apart from other notable TV movies. Also the fact that this was kind of the perfect way, that this was Netflix was kind of the perfect studio in order to be able to hit this, because I can't imagine wanting to watch this in theaters, but if this had been like aired as like during the year, well, I mean, obviously, but if this
I would have seen it in theaters.
Yeah, it does kind of make for a good, like, kind of cinematic viewing event. But I guess kind of what I'm trying to say is that this movie takes place almost a decade after the conclusion of the show. It takes place in 1940. We're in World War II now. You still having you still have kind of like...
You're going to talk me out of wanting to watch this now.
Oh, really? World War II is not an appeal for you? Oh, man.
You're like a huge fan of the show. I could see you having way more issues with it than
it's so tricky because
if it's like the Deadwood movie, I'll tolerate it. But yeah, the Deadwood movie is just such it pales in comparison to what the show brought you.
And that's ultimately always a trick when it comes to doing these film continuations / wrap-ups of these shows, because obviously we know writing for television is always different than writing for film. And so when you're kind of taking like that TV approach and trying to take people's familiarity with characters and put it into a movie format, not to mention the fact that with a movie, you're always going to run the risk of, is this like made for new people, or is this only made for people who've watched the show? So it's always kind of like a tricky thing when you try to take this approach ultimately.
Yeah, they really looked at the whole show and they decided to take this one small window and make this movie and call it the ending of the show. And like I don't know if you know the outside reason for one of the there's an actor that had outside difficulty.
I do know that. If we're talking
about
I don't know.
Well, Luke hasn't seen it yet, but I don't know. I don't want to like spoil anything.
Yeah, right.
Whatever. But like there's like, and because of that issue, I don't blame the movie for the first half of the path that goes. There is something that the movie does that I was kind of like, what the fuck? It was totally unnecessary to do something. And I'm just choosing to ignore it completely and just decide to think about the rest of the movie.
Are we talking about the Rebecca Ferguson character? And that
no, we're not talking about that. No, we're talking about a character that was in the show. That's not in the movie, where there's a bunch of them.
Yes.
They it's 10 years later.
Yeah, they do bring back a decent amount of the cast as which I do like.
Yeah, I will say there's a fate of a character that I hated. I was just told, but and it's like their hands were tied, but they also didn't have to do what they did either.
Yeah.
So that annoyed me. But as far as Tommy Shelby, Murphy's great.
Yeah.
Murphy's
never gonna go wrong with great. And also
Murphy's
for me,
incredible.
even more so than Murphy, who is incredible. It's the 1-2 punch of Murphy and Barry Keoghan, who have worked together in
he's awesome too.
Efforts, but Barry Keoghan, who I'll say this because this was revealed, Barry Keoghan is playing the character of Duke Shelby, who is Tommy's son that was introduced in the final season. The son that he had with the gypsy woman who was portrayed by Conrad Kahn, I think was the actor's name that played him in the show. But getting Barry Keoghan to play him, I'm like, and basically Barry Keoghan, you can see that he is the new Tommy Shelby.
I mean,
but like
he was meant to be in that show.
It kind of worked out perfectly, and it
I would say obviously I have my issues with this a lot, but the ending, sitting there in the end credits, no one in the audience moved. You clearly there's people that love the show.
Yes,
and there's like a song plays over the end credits, and everyone, you could tell it felt like saying goodbye to the show. So I was really loved.
The show was always really adept at finishing seasons. I pointed out that it follows like a structure and so forth, and by the time you get to the end of it, you're like, oh, Tommy figured it out again. But he's a mess, a disaster. The way the story always plays out in those final episodes is always fantastic. So I can see how they can translate that to a movie.
Yeah,
I've used that gun to the head and screaming for
definitely. It's a great meme worthy moment. But in terms of
just him out in the field with his own grave dug.
Yeah,
and you're like, how did he get out of this one?
Yeah, and then the next episode, it's like tune in next time in order to find out. But in terms of wrapping up kind of the legacy of Peaky Blinders that was really established. Again, my brother was the one who got me into it. He was really, really looking forward to this. And like, if you are a Peaky Blinders fan, I mean, it's going to be really tricky because it depends on what you take away from the show. But I feel like this movie is not going to disappoint in terms of that. It may leave you questioning, scratching your head. But I'd say that for my money, like this show, this movie did everything it needed to do in terms of wrapping up the story that was Peaky Blinders.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the show and I really enjoyed the movie. I would say if you love the show, I might enjoy the movie less than I did. That's probably what I would go with.
Again,
if I had to best guess, I would say that.
The show wasn't one of my favorites. I would never include Peaky Blinders when I'm talking about like the greats in terms of like the Sopranos, the Wires, the Mad Men's of the world. But like it is a very solid, notable show we're talking about, and I'm glad that it was able to get this movie at least to wrap up any loose overhanging storylines. Yeah. All right. So with that being said, that is our recap / review of Project Hail Mary and The Immortal Man. Like I said, big weekend. Next weekend is going to be a little bit of a quiet weekend before we get into April and some of the stuff that we've got going on there. Luke, you and me have 2 more Paul Thomas Anderson wrap up / review / recaps to get through. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Franchise addicts everywhere. Make sure that you're checking out those PTA reviews that Dom and I are doing. I've got a mustache just for Philip Seymour Hoffman and the Master. So that's why I'm wearing this ridiculous thing on my face. And yeah, check us out, Twitter, YouTube, everywhere. We are finishing up our Mad Max series with Furiosa, and Dom was just on our Fury Road episode that we did last night.
Yes, I had a lot of fun with that one. Pat, where could I know we already did this in the last one, but where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
I'm just on Letterboxd, Motion377.
Still, you're going to see a flood of like Letterboxd comments and followers recently.
I was considering the DiCaprio stash after the Oscars. He got a
hey, that's fair. That's fair right for the Scorsese movie.
I know, which looks like basically I saw on set thing. It looks like he's like basically doing Vertigo.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Cool.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
I'm in.
yeah.
I'm in. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like Scorsese and DiCaprio again. I'm in. I don't care what it's about. I'm like, I could care less. What's it called? And hopefully they'll do the DiCaprio Jennifer Lawrence relationship right after Don't Look Up. Hopefully we'll get a better version of that.
Yeah. I mean, she looks like a disaster in that. Like,
exactly.
So I'm like,
it's perfect. We love it when Lawrence plays a hot mess. She's great at it.
Yeah.
You guys can follow me with everything.
Didn't love Die My Love.
I still gotta watch that. I haven't got a chance to watch it yet.
I didn't love it either. She's fantastic, but like, it is.
I have heard it's a lot. If it's stress porn, like if I had like that, then great.
That's all it is.
It was like, it was like the movie Swallow. Did you see that with Haley Bennett, who looks like Jennifer Lawrence?
Yeah,
it was like it was like an assignment for a film class, and you're like, I gotta get through this.
Great. All right.
I still don't get Lakeith Steinsfeld. I don't know. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, we still gotta. He's still figuring out what the hell happened in his career. All right, you guys can follow me there with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talking TV Podcast across all platforms, and we will see you guys next week for something nice back home. But in the meantime, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We will see you guys next week.